Hats, hats, hats. Our second segment on hats. Welcome once more to AskOkey, ladies and gentlemen, and let's get into it. In the first segment, we did an overview of hats. We looked at a very high-level overview of hats, specifically the hats that I have here in my studio. We also spoke somewhat broadly about other types of hats. However, we focused on the hats that we had as examples here in the studio. Today, we're going to delve a little bit further into how to wear them, when to wear them, how to store them, how to care for them, and even how to pair them with your outfit. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hats are to be worn everywhere. There was a time, I'd say during the golden age or golden era, if you prefer that, somewhere between the 1900s and even before that, up until the Second World War, it was mandatory, in fact, for every man to wear a hat. And it was a sign of disrespect, in fact, for a man not to wear a hat. So it was part of a man's regalia, daily regalia. And that went away largely after the Second World War. So where to wear them? Functionally or traditionally, hats had to be worn everywhere, except indoors. Except indoors. And so tradition requires that when you step into the house or home, as a mark of respect, you took your hat off, or you took it off if it was in a private residence or even public space. So you weren't allowed to wear hats indoors, but hats had to be worn anywhere but indoors. Where could you wear each type of hat? So we're going to start from the left and walk our way around the room and talk about very, very briefly where each hat ought to be worn. Now, this is what you might call a fedora or a dress hat, more traditionally known as a dress hat. This was the sine qua non for every man back in the day when hats were worn. Every man had a fedora, also known as a dress hat. A dress hat, just a simple fedora. It could be bashed in any configuration, but a fedora, which basically has a wider brim than most hats. It's a wide brim hat. Mine here measures about 3 inches across the brim. And we'll talk about how you should choose the size of your brim in another segment. But for now, we're going to focus on where and how to wear them. And so here's a fedora. It's a standard dress hat, something that every man ought to have in your wardrobe. The second is a Panama. Now, a Panama, as you can see, is a fedora, essentially shaped like a fedora. It's oval at the top, it's creased here at the fore, and it's bashed inward, shaped exactly like a fedora. So it is basically the summer equivalent of a dress hat. And so for a summer suit or cotton suit, or for the summertime generally, gentlemen wore a straw hat or a Panama because it is more ventilated than the fedora, which typically comes in fur or some kind of fabric, animal fur or animal skin, meant to protect the head against the elements during the cooler season. So again, the Panama hat functions similarly, or sort of it functions in a very similar to a dress hat. It is a dress hat, but to be worn exclusively during the warm summer months. The next here is a Belmont. Well, Optimal calls it a Belmont, but it is a pork pie. A pork pie, which is now made as a pork pie, but the first pork pies were actually regular hats that were bashed differently in an oval, sort of in a round cylindrical oval, typically worn by musicians and artists. Frank Lloyd Wright, who was a very popular architect in the 1930s up until the 60s, I think he died somewhere in the 70s, this was his trademark. And Optimal, the shop where I get my hats, as a matter of fact, has a specific model named for Frank Lloyd Wright. It is called the Wright. It's basically a pork pie like this, a bit higher brim, how Frank preferred to wear his. But other than that, this is a pork pie. This is something I would wear with fun outfits. on a beautiful evening out. Let's say you were going to the club, you were going to the lounge, you were going out to dinner, something fun. This is something you could pair with more, shall we say, expressive outfits, fancy jackets, colorful jackets, and so on and so forth. So this is what I would call more of a fun hat. Very, very expressive and very artistic in its expression. That's the pork pie or the Belmont, as Optimo would prefer to call it. Now, here we have yet another fedora. Again, a dress hat, very similar to the gray one in silver belly. This is done in brown elk. Performs pretty much the same function as a fedora. It is a dress hat. However, of course, the color is different. This is brown, so this would go with, let's say, less formal outfits. Whereas the gray one, you might wear with your navy suits and your gray suits and your more somber business suits. Something like this would perform the same function, however, to be worn with more casual outfits such as your corduroys, your tweeds, your flannels, and so on and so forth. Of course, a cool weather skin as well. This one, the brown dress hat or the brown fedora. We put it back on a mannequin over here, Jorge. And to my right is the ultimate gentleman's hat. The ultimate gentleman's hat. It is the Homburg. This model Optimo, where I get all my hats, most of my hats, they call it the Metropolitan. And it is with good reason, it is called the Metropolitan because it is such a polished hat. It gives you sort of just a very polished look. As I mentioned in the first segment, Churchill was particularly fond of these. He wore these everywhere, or he wore this everywhere. He wore a smallish Homburg, which looked rather odd on his very large frame, but this is something that all statesmen wore back in the day. If you went to the Parliament, the British Parliament that is, back in the 30s and 40s, all the, well, I suppose what you would call the equivalent of the MPs, not the congressmen, that's American, all the MPs, members of Parliament, both in the upper and the lower house, the House of Lords and the House of Commons, they all wore. This was not quite mandatory, but it was a dress hat. And if you recall, back then, men wore strollers. What is a stroller? A stroller is basically a combination of striped trousers. We call them cashmere stripes. It's not made of cashmere, but the striped trousers you wear with your morning dress. And a stroller would be a dark jacket. Typically, it could be double-breasted or single-breasted, but it would be made in black barathia. And this was formal business dress back in the day. What we call suits today, or business suits, used to be called lounge suits. They were casual suits to be worn at home and at casual events. For formal business meeting, gentlemen wore what you would call a stroller, which is, like I said again, a dark jacket, usually black or midnight blue, done in barathia, and paired with striped trousers, cashmere stripes, which is seen today on your morning dress. Some actually wore them with houndstooth, very small puppy tooth trousers, just to provide, again, as a substitute for your cashmere striped trousers. So that is the Metropolitan or the Homburg. Something like this you would wear with your tuxedo, certainly. Black tie, very elegant evening events. Black tie certainly, but doesn't have to be black tie. Could be an evening out with your paramour. You could wear this with a dark navy jacket, a dark navy double-breasted jacket, or single-breasted jacket, a dinner jacket. You could even wear this with a velvet dinner jacket. It's got beautiful, nice texture on it, so it picks up the texture on the velvet jacket or any other type of dinner jacket you prefer. But certainly, this is outside of its traditional function as the ultra dress hat. This is an evening hat, something just very elegant, very serious, very somber, highly sophisticated. So again, the Homburg, something every man or to at least aim to own. There we have it. Put it back right here on Jimmy. Come on, Jimmy, behave yourself. Okay, that's Jorge, and that is Jimmy. Those are our two AskOkey models, Jorge and Jimmy over here. So takes us back here. Behind me, I have also a Panama hat. Now, this is in spirit a fedora, or sort of a dress hat, because of the way it's shaped. Shaped very, very similar to its more formal counterpart. Again, as I mentioned in an earlier video on hats, I got these two hats to perform two different functions. This is a dress hat. This is a more casual hat. Now, they're made of the same material, basically. This is beautiful Monte Cristi straw from Ecuador. Just sort of very fine Monte Cristi straw, both of them. Some get this in a darker color, and then it's called a Milan straw, which is quite different from this particular straw. But a Milan straw, such casual fedoras or summer dress hats are either made in the Monte Cristi or in a Milan straw. This I had made in a Monte Cristi. But here, the primary difference, as you can see, are two things. The brim on the formal hat is wider. This is about 3 inches, and this is about 2 1/4 inches or thereabout. Now, you might ask, why? Because dress hats typically come with broader brims. With dress hats, you're wearing typically a coat or a jacket, meaning sort of an overcoat or a jacket or suit jacket or a sport jacket or what have you. And the brim essentially balances out the width of the garment you're wearing. Whereas the more casual equivalent is a more casual hat to be worn with sometimes without a jacket. You could wear this with a linen shirt and shorts, or linen shirt and sort of linen beach drawstring pants, like AskOkey drawstring pants. I wear these very often with just sort of a linen shirt in the summer, linen shirt and linen trousers and sort of loafers, something just has a very casual vibe to it. You can also wear this with your shorts. Let's say you're sort of going to the beach or something like that. This is something you could just toss on casually with very, very casual outfits or a casual jacket. So that is the primary difference between that Panama hat and this Panama hat. I'll put this back here and I'll place this back. Again, one more thing worthy of mention is the ribbon. The ribbon is this, what you see here. The ribbon can also be used to shall I say, calibrate the casualness or lack thereof, or the formality or lack thereof of a hat. A dark brim in either black or dark navy or midnight, essentially it's a darker, more somber color. So that is more serious, more severe. Whereas for a more casual hat, you might go for a more fun ribbon. Here we have this beautiful honey rust color. Some go for more colorful ribbons or even stripes and so on and so forth. Just again to capture the very casual nature of a casual Panama hat. I'll put this back. Now I'll put this fellow back here. Now this is an interesting one, a border. It's a very, very traditional hat, worn at boating regalias. Now, you might have seen, I'm sure they still host these events several places around the world, but they used to be quite common back in the day, boating regalias. Today, they're seen as more, let's say, fringe, to belong to sort of a fringe part of society, the uppity crowd, if you will. But it has a very aristocratic look to it. It's worn with a boating blazer. You might have seen those boating blazers. They're often come in bold stripes, in blue, sometimes in burgundy, sometimes in a combination of blue and burgundy, and even other colors, even yellow. But this is one a bow tie, and then obviously the blazers are paired very often with cricket white trousers, right? If it's in the summer, then maybe like a summer off-white gabardine, and if it's in the fall, then a proper cricket white flannel. But that is it. It's a bow tie. It's a very formal in the sense that it's worn to specific events. It's an event hat. But like as with everything in our modern times or in our contemporary times, these hats are used outside of their traditional configuration or outside of their traditional use or their traditional purpose. So you might see artists, musicians, all sorts of people wear a bow tie with a suit. They could wear it with a casual outfit, just as a fun thing to wear. But it's a very stiff hat. You can't fold it, you can't bend it. That's what it is, a bow tie, used for boating regalias and to be worn with boating events, 2 boating events. That's it for our dress hats. And then we have more casual hats, and I'll talk about them generally. There are 3 of them here. I'll grab this here and I'll grab this here. These are hats that are to be worn very casually. So, you're running an errand. This is a newsboy or a bicker boy. Actually, this is a bicker boy hat. That is a newsboy hat over there. But these 2 are bicker boy hats. They basically have 8 equal segments. They're broken into 8 quadrants, and they have a button in the middle with a little flap in front of it. It's just a very casual hat, something to toss on your head, just to cover your head when you have on a pair of jeans or corduroys or, even dress trousers. But when you want to have a very, very dressed down look, where do you wear this? Pretty much everywhere. Everywhere that doesn't require any dress code or sort of a formal dress code. So I keep this around, and I just sort of, if I need to run an errand to the store or go for an evening walk on a brisk, cool evening, this is something you could just toss on. Protects your head, of course, from the elements, but also gives you sort of a little bit of a dash of style. Nothing like a hat, I like to say, to just sort of to complete an outfit. So that's, I'll put this back here, and I'll put this back here. So we've talked about where to wear them. Now, how to wear them, straight or angled. Now, for the purposes of demonstration, I'm going to grab our brown fedora over here because it's the closest to me, and I think it goes rather well with the outfit I have on. Okay, so we're going to do a little demo here. I'm going to just fix the crown a little bit here. Now, it all comes down to your face or your head shape, right? Some like to wear them straight like that, which is very, very serious and just, let's say, standard. But to add a dash of style, right? You've seen a lot of classic images, old images from the archives of many artists back in the day. Frank Sinatra, even Al Capone, if you allow me to borrow that example, not such a flattering example, but even Al Capone, they wore their hats to one side, right? Typically to the left side, right? So tilted, a little bit of a tilt to the left side. It just gives the hat sort of a dash of style, right? When you wear it straight like this, as some prefer to do, it's fine, but it just looks so square. However, angling it to one side just adds sort of that dash of, as the French would say, dégage. Italians would say spezzatura, which is just sort of a little bit of sort of a careless look to it. A careless, or shall I say, a carefully curated careless look that just gives you that extra dash of style. So I would recommend wearing them slightly angled. I angle mine to the left. Some might angle to the right, but I've often seen them angle to the left. So there you have it. Similar with all other hats, I'd say for the most part. The Belmont, it's a bit different because of the shape. right? It's got it's almost round. Most artists, they wear their belmonts actually backwards, tilted backwards this way, with the face open. Whereas with the fedora, they wear it down here, covering the face, using the flap, using the brim, or tilting the brim to cover the face. With the pork pie, right, the pork pie or the belmont, most artists would wear them actually back that way, with the whole face showing, basically. So the hat just sits back there, and it just looks like that. From the side, that's what it looks like. Just worn that way. So yeah, this is the only exception where the hat is worn to the rear, so to speak. Now, the Homburg, I should say, also, just because of its very formal nature, it's a very, very severe formal hat. So some tilt them, but just because it is just such a formal hat, it is what you might call a square hat. So, it is worn right directly on the head like that. Just straight on the head, like just straight. It's just formal. There's not much license there for, shall we say, casualness with a Homburg, because it's such a formal hat. So again, you wear it straight on like that, from the side, from the back, from the side again, and the front. So again, the Homburg, unlike the fedora, which gives you a little bit of room, latitude for expression, the Homburg leaves you very little room for expression just because of the nature of the hat itself. It's a very formal, severe hat. So you wear it just like this, just sort of drop it on your head, straight on, like that. Okay, so that's a Homburg. Put this back. We've talked about the fedora. Now, the bota is another interesting one. Again, this is a hat that is angled. It has to be angled. In fact, it looks silly when worn directly on top of the hat because it's such a shallow hat. If you can see, it's got very little depth. I mean, the crown of your head literally touches the end of the hat. So wearing it straight like this, it just doesn't look right. So most botas you will see definitely are tilted to the side just like that. The front, the side, the back, the side again, and back to the front. So that's how you wear a bota. You just literally just place it, that's it. Just place it on top of your head. And it's very shallow, so it doesn't allow you to move around much. You have to be very, very cautious when because it's easily tipped over just because of the lack of depth in the height of the crown itself. It's got a very shallow crown when compared to all the other hats. For instance, when you compare the height of the crown to the height of the crown of a typical dress hat, it's very shallow. So it really has to be worn with a lot of care, such that an odd wind or an ill wind doesn't blow your hat off, or your proverbial hat off. And there we have that. The casual hats are what they are. I mean, they're so casual. You can wear them straight on. You can wear them at the side. Some might even wear them back that way if they really want to get very, very casual about it. But it is so casual that you can wear it as you wish. But if you watch Peaky Blinders or any of these other television series where men wore these with three-piece suits and so on and so forth, these were usually sort of, let's say, men of questionable character, and they expressed their, shall we say, predispositions in the way they wore these hats, or they expressed their character in the way they wore these hats very, very cavalierly, if I can use that word. So that's how we wear the hats. What to wear them with? This is where it's going to get quite interesting. And for that, we have picked Jorge and Jimmy over here to be our models. Now, we could do any number of, combinations and permutations with all these jackets. But in the interest of time, of which we don't have that much, we're going to limit it to these two AskOkey jackets here, worn by our AskOkey models. Now, this is a beautiful gun club. It's a dark chocolate brown gun club. Certainly a fall weather, done in a very, very fine lamb's wool. And here we have a beautiful tweed in herringbone. Now, this is sort of, let's start from the right. What would I pair with this? Definitely this. Definitely. This is a beautiful sort of a dark, I'd say gray jacket. We've dressed the mannequin up here in sort of in a monochrome. And so that essentially picks up the spirit of the Homburg. Just very serious look, very business serious look, white shirt, a dark tie, using the pocket square here just to sort of introduce a little bit of pattern there. But otherwise, it's a very, very serious outfit. And so the Homburg really is at home here. Now, another hat I would venture here would certainly be a dress hat. And this just works perfectly as well. As you can see, I'm going to just hold this. But it works perfectly as well. As you can see, it's a dress hat. So again, quite a formal hat, but not as formal as the Homburg. But it goes very well with something like this. Again, it could be a suit or a business suit in gray or navy or your dark colors. And this would be just absolutely suitable. So there we have it. These two definitely I would pair with our model Jimmy over here. This, I'm not so sure. I think the outfit, in my view, is a bit too somber or too sort of serious for a pork pie. Now, you could, of course, there are no conventions that essentially forbid you from wearing them or wearing this with wearing a pork pie with a dressy jacket, but I just wouldn't if I had an option. So there we have it here. We're going to leave this here. What else do we have here? We have the Panama. Now, would I do this? I wouldn't. And why wouldn't I? Because it's incongruous, right? This is a tweed. It's a beautiful tweed fabric, and this is a summer hat. So we all know that you wear tweed in the fall, and your summer hat is for the summer. So it just looks, it is just from a sartorial, this is a grammatical sartorial standpoint. This would be just poor grammar. You cannot, the design language or the sartorial language just doesn't agree, because they belong in or to different seasons. The brown dress hat, I could see this. It wouldn't be my first choice. The gray hat and the black would be would come before this, but I could see this. But again, as I mentioned earlier, this is a hat that you would wear with more casual or fall type outfits. Here to my left, we have Jorge. We had looked at the outfit on Jimmy. Here we have Jorge. This is a more casual color. That was a gray, which is a more, I should say, business-ish color. Browns, of course, if you're familiar with the term, no brown in town. So we're going to assume that we're out in the country for a moment and see what works here. Now, let's look at this. This is the pork pie. Would it work with this? Maybe. It's a casual jacket. I would do this, maybe not the color combination, but in the right color, I would wear pork pie with this. But this is really where Jorge is at home. Jorge is at home with this. This is just a perfect hat for Jorge, because it's a brown felt or brown fedora made of elk. So again, you have the beautiful texture on the hat, picking up the nice lamb's wool texture on the jacket. It goes really well with the dark tone, or sort of the dark brown tone of the jacket, and so on and so forth. So this would be my number one choice, of course. This, of course, will not work. It's just too serious, too somber for this outfit. It just would not work. Again, we're speaking different sartorial languages here. This is a very, very formal hat. This is a very casual coat. Now, the fedora, the silver belly, well, it will work definitely, but again, brown would be my first choice. I would go with brown for this outfit over gray, because gray is just sort of something that I would probably wear with my blues and my grays, business suits or sort of more serious suits. So yes, the brown, the summer fedora, the Panama, of course not. And the reason being that they belong to two different seasons, okay? This is a fall cloth. It's a nice, beautiful lamb's wool. Just a rich fall cloth, fall winter, not quite winter, it's not that thing, but it's a fall cloth. So wearing a summer hat over sort of a fall jacket, again, you're speaking two separate sartorial languages, and it just doesn't work. I mean, you could do it. You're not going to be arrested by the fashion police, but it's just those with an eye for finer things, a sort of more sophisticated eye, would probably snare at that. So that's that. We'll put this down here. What else could we do with Jorge over here? Certainly not the border. No. Again, this is a very, very special occasion hat. Rarely worn outside of, like I said, boating regalias, sometimes a garden summer party, but it's a very formal hat. Again, it's just not something I would wear with a tweed jacket or with a lamb's wool jacket like that. This again, a fedora, no, it doesn't work, because again, they belong in different seasons. These tweed hats could work. I mean, I see this done all the time, wearing flat hats, baker boy hats with a tweed jacket, and it's a very, very traditional look. It's a very, shall we say, what they used to call the working man's look back in the day. The more, I should say, aristocratic class, of course, would wear a proper dress hat, but the working class back then, everyone wore these in the place of a proper dress hat where the occasion required one. So this is something I would definitely wear with a tweed jacket. Now, this is again a lamb's wool, so it's not really a tweed, it's a finer fabric. So I would probably personally not wear something like this. I would wear sort of a dressier hat, just to ensure that there is some harmony between the top, the hat, and the coat itself. So we put this back. And the other two hats over there are casual hats. This certainly has no place. This is the equivalent of wearing a baseball hat with a beautiful jacket. So I just wouldn't do this. Again, you're not going to get arrested if you did it. Some might do it just as a style statement, but if you want to get to sort of the fundamentals of the intrinsic truth of it, I just would not wear something so casual with such a fine, dressy jacket. So I'll put this right back here. And that's sort of a brief rundown of how you could pair these hats with specifically these two mannequins, which Jorge to my left and Jimmy to my right, who we've dressed up for the purposes of illustration. You could try different combinations at home, and feel free to sort of exhaust your imagination. So that's it. And then we're going to look at the do's and the don'ts. What do you do and what don't you do with your hat? When not to wear them, like I said earlier, you don't wear them indoors as a mark of respect. You take them off when you step in in an enclosed or covered space, just as a mark of respect to everyone else out there. You remove them. One other thing I should mention is that, again, this is just sort of decorum. Back then, you tipped your hat either to a lady as a mark of respect or to sort of a more, let's say, someone with authority, someone with higher authority than you are. Say your boss, or an older person, or someone that required some or that demanded some kind of respect. You basically simply what they call tipping your hat. And the way it used to be done is that you would take your hat off and then you would, either bow or just sort of tip your hat. And then the more, should I say, contemporary way to do it is that sometimes people just sort of tip their hat that way or even touched it as a mark of respect. So rather than taking it off completely, you might just sort of choose to just sort of either tip it off slightly or just touch it as a mark of respect when you come into the presence of a lady, a beautiful young lady, I would imagine, or someone with more authority than you hold as a mark, again, of respect. I'll take this off, put it back here. No, it doesn't belong there. That would be sartorial blunder. And that's really when to wear them, when not to wear them, indoors and outdoors. You don't wear them indoors, you wear them outdoors, and then you tip them as a mark of respect. How to choose your first hat. Now, when you're building a hat wardrobe, this is, I wouldn't say a tricky one, but, people dress differently. There you have your suit types, you have your casual types. So depending on your dress code or what your dress code calls for, your profession, it could be just your professional or your own taste. Let's say you are an artist, for instance, a jazz musician or a painter. Of course, you want something a bit more expressive. You might want to go for a pork pie because this is something that would go with all your outfits or sort of that work with the vibe or the nature of what you do. It's artistic, it's expressive, it probably goes with a lot of your wardrobe, so you'd probably be better off going with a pork pie. However, back then, the first hat every man got, of course, was a dress hat, because back then everybody wore suits, right? Most men wore suits, so a dress hat was the sine qua non. It was absolutely compulsory, so every man had a fedora, right? So back then, most people purchased a fedora as their first hat. However, today, hats are not compulsory, not even by any stretch of the imagination. And so you might choose to forego the fedora as your first hat and go for something like a Homburg, or even a proper formal hat. Let's say you're just not the hat wearing type and you reserve your hat wearing for very formal occasions, for your morning dress or your black tie. You might say, well, I don't really like to wear hats, but let's say you want to look very complete in your dressy outfit, your dinner suits or your formal suits, such as your morning dress or evening tails. You could use this. As I mentioned in the first segment, the proper hat to wear with your morning dress is a proper top hat. However, those look today rather anachronistic, and I'm not even sure that, as bold as I am, that I would have the courage to wear one. So for those very formal occasions where, let's say, a top hat would be required, you could get away with a Homburg. So if you were the type who just wants to look complete in your formal outfit, a Homburg could be the first call. So what else do we have here? Of course, these are what I would call sort of special occasion hats. You really don't need them, really, unless you just sort of want to have one, or you just sort of want to have the proper hat for every occasion. This is absolutely not a necessity, more of let's say, a choice. There you have it. Again, we've looked at the Panama. Again, this is something for the summer, especially when it gets really hot, right? I would certainly recommend this. And I recommend this because whereas most men are a bit conscious when they wear proper dress hats and fedoras because they just look very dressy, they just have that gravitas about them. Panama is a lot more playful. This is a very playful hat. It doesn't convey that same weight of seriousness or gravitas that more formal hats do. So for a lot of people who are dipping their toes into the hat ring, in a manner of speaking, typically a summer hat or Panama is usually a good entry point because it's something you could wear very, very playfully over the summer without sort of coming across as let's say, some would say dorky. But I mean, these are terms that don't apply to me, of course, because I care very little what people think about what I wear specifically. But if you're very conscious about wearing hats generally, a Panama hat worn during the summer usually is a good entry point. So there we have it. We'll put this back here. And then, of course, these are casual hats. To me, if you're a hat-wearing person or if you're a baseball hat-wearing person, this would be a good substitute for baseball hats. I mean, baseball hats are just childish, very sophomorical for little kids. So when I see grown men wearing baseball hats outside of sports or not actually playing baseball, it just looks really very sophomorical. So if you want to dress casually, if you prefer to dress very casually and still want to have a hat on, like a baseball hat, this would be a proper substitute. A proper newsboy hat would be a good substitute for your casual baseball hat. That's it for your first hat. Now, how to care for them. Hats are very delicate because of the material. These are really very, very delicate skins and furs. Very, I don't want to use the word expensive. I mean, some of them are more expensive than others, but they're very, very delicate and they ought to be handled with the utmost care. Now, what I do, just because I'm not an expert and I don't pretend to be one with hats, I would send them back to Optimal or to the hat maker to give it a thorough rundown. They clean them out inside out. They clean the sweatband. Not a full restoration, but it's just basically they clean them up. If you can see here, after a while of torching the brim here, it starts to get dirty. It starts to pick up dirt. So every now and then you have to sort of send it in to get cleaned. If you can do it yourself at home, more power to you. I just don't do it myself because I don't know what I'm doing from a cleaning standpoint. And I don't want to even think about destroying these hats just because of how beautiful and delicate and quite pricey they are. So as far as caring for them, you could do DIY, do it yourself if you know how to do it properly at home. I couldn't tell you how to because I wouldn't even dare. I just send it back to the hat maker to have it cleaned. Storage. This is a very important one. Now, to my left here, what I have here is a hat box. Every hat comes in a box like this. Well, most proper, well-made hats. They come in a box like this. It's an oval box, shaped like an oval. This particular one is from Optimal. And the reason they come in boxes is for storage. Now, when I'm wearing them, or when I have them on, I'm at home, I typically hang them up here on my hat hanger. So you could have one if you want to, if you're not into sort of storing them. This is more for long-term storage. So for day-to-day, when you come home, you just don't drop them on your table or just sort of on your bed or what have you. The proper way to do it is to hang it up properly on a hat hanger, just like that one. You could get sort of a table hat hanger, or a standing hat hanger, such as I have behind me. Just hang it with the front facing down and the rear facing up. Just that simple. Now, for long-term storage, let's say the hat is out of season and you're not going to wear it till the next season. Of course, you want it protected from the elements, dust, and all the sorts of elements of nature. You store it in a hat box, and the way it works is basically you take the hat like that, and the brim or the crown goes in first. The crown goes in. It's shaped to accommodate the crown. It goes in like that, and then you can see the brim. And because these hats, at least mine, are made for me, for my head, they're custom made. And so the box, of course, has to be shaped, right? It has to sort of be picked. The size of the box will be determined by the size of your particular brim. So here you have it. It's almost a close match between the brim of my hat and the circumference of the hat box. So that's what you do when it's out of season. You store it in here, and you just place the lid over it like that. It closes that way. It's got a little handle on it like that. You grab it like that, and you put it in your attic or in your closet or wherever you store your out of season things, and you just keep it that way. It's very well sealed, weather protected. This is actually leather, believe it or not. This is sort of very stretched leather, so it's really beautiful box. And you just put it away somewhere, and then pull it back up or bring it back down when the season comes around to wear them. Other than that, that's really how you store hats. Either for short-term storage, you put it up on a hat hanger, and for longer-term storage, you make sure to place it in an enclosed hat box to preserve it. So that's about it for hats today, for this segment at least, in terms of what to do, depending on your budget or depending on how interested or how keen you are on hats. There are any number of hat makers. A simple Google search, as I said in the first segment. I like Optimo because I've worked with them for many years, and the hats are just the most beautiful hats, in my opinion. Some of you will differ or beg to differ. There's Akubra. There's all sorts of different. I mean, of course, there's Lock & Co. There's Borsellino, which in my view is a fallen angel, and any number of other brands out there. But just do your own homework, a little bit of homework. Simple Google search if you're really interested in hats, and you come up with sort of different hats, brands and makers and their ranking. So that's it. What do we have on today? Of course, we're in all AskOkey, as always. AskOkey single-breasted jacket here, a classic jacket, which is sort of the longer cut. We're coming up with a different cut or another cut, but it's all for now. But this is a typical standard classic cut, single-breasted, one-button jacket, done in a beautiful, beautiful lamb's wool. It almost feels like a lamb's wool. This is Lamb's Golden Veil by H. Lesser. It's just a beautiful summer gun club, I would like to say, because most gun clubs are darker like that, or in sort of darker colors. But this is a light beige background summer gun club with a beautiful, beautiful blue over checks on it. Of course, picks up the nice light blue, turquoise blue linen trousers we have here. Again, these are AskOkey trousers, flat front model, flat front classic trousers, done in Lisbon linen from Dugdale Brothers, but this is a signature sort of flat front AskOkey cut. And for the shirt, we have a AskOkey Cooper collar. Some would call it a camp collar, but our head of Bespoke clothing, Trevor Wolf, who names all our garments, calls this a Cooper collar. And so it's a one-piece collar. It's a very casual shirt, something that I wear either open neck or with a little scarf. But it's just a one-piece collar that rolls, and it's just beautiful. You could actually flip it up that way and wear it just a little bit more, let's say, with a bit more dégage, more sort of spectatura. But since we are gentlemen and we like to appear as such, I'm going to tuck them back right under my coat collar and look like a gentleman and not like a rake. So That's it. Just little accessories here, pocket square and scarf to pick things up. A nice dark brown suede shoe, to pick up the dark brown in the jacket. And that's about it. Thank you for joining us for this very interesting, in my view, of course, segment of AskOkey on hats. I hope you found it very useful. Do not forget to follow us on Instagram, AskOkey IG. That's AskOkeyIG. Follow us on Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That will be YouTube/AskOkey Inc. And also our Discord community. Please also follow us on our, join our Discord community. It's a growing community of like-minded individuals who like to talk about all things sartorial and beyond. So with that, I'd like to bid you goodbye, farewell for now, until our next segment. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for joining us, and goodbye.